Well, good evening. I certainly enjoyed singing those songs with you all. One of them I was more familiar with than the other two, but there is something special about learning new songs. It forces you to think a little bit more about the words because you're not familiar with them. Forces you to think about when you're singing and when someone else, another part might be singing. And that mental engagement in new songs is really beneficial. And those were certainly three beautiful songs, and I look forward to incorporating those into our worship moving forward. I'm going to ask you to open up your Bibles this evening to Ezekiel chapter 2. Ezekiel chapter 2. We're not going to have any slides tonight. It's going to be like we're studying the Bible in the 1900s tonight. No slides. You're just going to have to follow along with me. We're going to be in Ezekiel chapters 2 and 3 this evening. And in some ways, Jeremy this morning kind of built upon one point that I made in a sermon last Sunday. And in some ways, I'm going to kind of build upon some things he talked about this morning in the lesson this evening. But to kind of set the context and the stage for us as we get to Ezekiel chapters 2 and 3, Babylon has conquered the nation of Judah and taken the people into captivity. And at this point, many of them, Ezekiel included, have been taken from their homes and now reside as slaves, essentially, in the southern region of Babylon. And God, here in these two chapters, is going to call Ezekiel into service, call Ezekiel into his work as a prophet. And he tells Ezekiel a little bit about the work that he's going to need him to do in chapters 2 and 3. And I want to read portions of that together this evening. We're not going to read all of that, but we're going to start with the first 7 verses of chapter 2. So when I saw it, this is Ezekiel talking, so when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard a voice of one speaking. And he said to me, "Son of man, stand on your feet, and I will speak to you." Then the Spirit entered me when he spoke to me and set me on my feet, and I heard him who spoke to me. And he said to me, "Son of man, I am sending you to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me to this very day. For they are impudent and stubborn children. I am sending you to them, and you shall say to them, 'Thus says the Lord God.' As for them, whether they hear or whether they refuse, for they are a rebellious house, yet they will know that a prophet has been among them. And you, son of man, do not be afraid of them, nor be afraid of their words. Through briars and thorns are with you, and you dwell among scorpions. Do not be afraid of their words or dismayed by their looks, though they are a rebellious house. You shall speak my words to them, whether they hear or whether they refuse, for they are rebellious." Jump down a little bit with me into chapter 3. We're going to continue reading, and then we're going to stop and summarize some of this together. Let's go into chapter 3, beginning this time in verse number 7. Chapter 3, verse 7. "But the house of Israel," this is still God speaking to Israel, or speaking to Ezekiel, "but the house of Israel will not listen to you, because they will not listen to me. For all the house of Israel are impudent and hard-hearted. Behold, I have made your face strong against their faces, and your forehead strong against their foreheads. Like adamant stone, harder than flint, I have made your forehead. Do not be afraid of them, nor be dismayed at their looks." And then jump down a few more verses, this time in verse number 15. "Then I came to the captives at Tel Abib, who dwelt by the river Chebar, and I sat where they sat, and remained there astonished among them 7 days. Now it came to pass at the end of 7 days that the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. Therefore hear a word from my mouth, and give them warning from me. When I say to the wicked, you shall surely die, and you give him no warning, nor speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way to save his life, that same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. Yet if you warn the wicked, and he does not turn from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but you have delivered your soul. I want you to think for just a second about what God is asking Ezekiel to do. Ezekiel, I need you to take my words to the people of Israel. Okay, so far, so good. But I need you to know something about them. They're rebellious. They're obstinate. They're stubborn. And they aren't going to listen to you. But I need you to do it anyway. Paints a pretty bleak picture for Ezekiel. I need you to go do something for me. But they're not going to listen to you. How would you feel in that situation if that was you? Hey, God, can we talk about this for just... If they're not going to listen to me, what's the point? If they're not going to listen to me, then why would you subject me to everything that I'm going to receive back from this rebellious, stubborn, obstinate people? Why would you subject me to that if they're not going to listen? Can't we just skip all of this? No, we can't. And God goes on to tell Ezekiel, if they don't listen to what you have to say, that's on them. But if you don't tell them, that's on you. Now, that's a pretty powerful message that God places in front of his servant Ezekiel. A really difficult task. Something, as Jeremy talked about this morning, something that is very hard, very challenging. Ezekiel is being told from the very beginning that he is going to be subjected to ridicule, to hate, by this obstinate, stubborn group of people that doesn't want to listen to anything that he has to say. And so Ezekiel does what I imagine many of us might do. He goes and he sits down to think about it for a while. Did you catch that part in verse 18? Or is it verse 18? I took my glasses off. Verse 15. When he goes to the people, what's he do? He sits down for 7 days. For 7 days, he just sits among the people. And that's when God calls to Ezekiel. He says, I didn't tell you to go sit among the people. I need you to go speak to the people. And that's when he tells Ezekiel, I've made you a watchman. And the responsibility to tell them the words of God falls on you. Now, I want us this evening to make some application to this story. There is perhaps the obvious application to this story that we will make about the need for us to be sharing the gospel, regardless of how people might respond to that. Far too often, we can be guilty of assuming the responses of people before we have actually made an effort to present the gospel to them. But even if we're not assuming the response, even if we know for sure what the response is going to be, does that abdicate us of our responsibility to be sharers of the good news? It doesn't. It doesn't. What if they don't listen to me? What if they don't want anything to do with what I have to say? That's on them. But what if your hesitation, what if your fear of how they might respond, what if your previous encounters with them lead you to say, they're just not going to listen to me anyway, so I'm just going to sit this one out? That's on you. That's on you. And you're going to have to answer for that one day. God has entrusted his people with his words. He has given us the inspired scriptures that tell us the complete story of his plan of salvation for mankind, and he has placed it in our hands, and he has given it to us to understand, and his expectation is that we will then share it and teach it to others. And if we don't, because those people are rebellious and obstinate and stubborn and hard-headed and don't want to listen to me, that's on me. And I have to answer for that. I don't think that's the only application that we can make from this text, however. I want you to think about a couple of other things with me. What about when it comes to the responsibility that we have as Christians to be generous and to be giving people, to be the kind of people that are ready to help the needy and help the downtrodden and the vulnerable and the less fortunate? In one of our Bible classes, we're studying through the book of Isaiah. And it seems as if every class it is coming up about how seriously God takes the way that his people treat the needy and the less fortunate. And entire nations are being judged because they are oppressing the needy and oppressing the vulnerable. And Jesus, when he comes to earth, he doesn't spend time in the fancy houses with all the rich people. He goes to the ones who are lame and who are blind and who are less fortunate than everyone else. That's where Jesus went. That's where he wants us to be. And the New Testament is full of teaching about how God's people are to be generous to the extreme. But what if our generosity is met with stubbornness, thanklessness? What if our generosity isn't used in the way that we would like to see it used? What if we help someone in a tremendous way and they never once say thank you? And the next time that need comes up, I remember last time they weren't thankful. Last time they didn't show any appreciation for the help they received. I'm not falling for that again. That's on you. We're called to be generous. We're called to be giving. We're called to help. We're called to lift up those who have been beaten down. We're called to be there for the most vulnerable among us. And if they don't respond the way that we think they should respond, that's on them. They'll have to answer for that one day. But if I withhold that generosity because I know or I think I know how they might respond, God will hold me accountable for that one day. We are called to give, we are called to share, we are called to lift up, we are called to help. And we do that, we should do that, regardless of the response that we may receive. What about when it comes to love? It's our job, we have been given a task as Christians to manifest God's goodness to others. And we do that through our words and through our actions. We cannot let the response, or again, the anticipated response of those on the receiving end of that goodness prevent us from manifesting it in this world. Jesus says, "Love others like I've loved you." That love was selfless. That love was the kind of love that boggles my mind. Romans chapter 5, Jesus died for us while we were still sinners. Jesus died for us when we were enemies of His. He loved us even when He knew the response that He was going to get was not love in return. But He loved anyway. And He told His people to go and do the same. And so if someone isn't thankful for the abundant generosity shown to them, or they take advantage of my kindness, that's on them. But withholding that kindness, withholding that generosity, withholding that love because of how they might respond, that's on me. You see, we face a similar situation in our lives as Christians that Ezekiel was facing. Different circumstances, different specifics, but the choices are going to be the same. People are not necessarily going to respond well to you. They're not going to respond well to you sharing the gospel. They may not respond well to your kindness and generosity. They may not respond well to your love. And so what do we do in those situations? We share the gospel anyway. We give freely anyway. And we show the love of Jesus anyway. And we take heart that we aren't the first ones that are being asked to do that. I think it's really interesting as we were reading this text. If you go back to chapter 3, verses 8 and 9 that we read a few moments ago, what does God say about what He has done for Ezekiel, knowing the circumstances that He has placed Ezekiel in? Behold, I have made your face strong against their faces, and your forehead strong against their foreheads. Like adamant stone, harder than flint, I have made your forehead. Do not be afraid of them, nor be dismayed at their looks, though they are a rebellious house. How does God respond to hard-headed, stubborn, obstinate people? By making His people a little bit hard-headed themselves. Ezekiel, I've hardened your forehead. So don't be afraid. Go head-to-head with them. God's people need a little bit of hard-headedness to them. God's people need some thick skin sometimes. Because, as we talked about this morning, the work that God has prepared for us is not easy. But He hasn't left us ill-equipped for that. He will make you just stubborn enough, just hard-headed enough. He'll give you just thick enough skin to be able to move forward in the work that He has prepared for you, even amongst stubborn, obstinate, rebellious, and hard-headed people. And so we can do that with confidence. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of facing rejection. Don't be afraid of facing rebellious people. Don't be afraid of facing obstinate people. God will see us through those situations if we put our trust in Him. That's the promise that He made to Ezekiel. I've got you. I know what I'm asking you to do. I know what it sounds like. And I'm going to help you through it. But I can't have you sitting on the sidelines. I need you in the game. And that's the call to you and I this evening. God needs us in the game. He didn't send Ezekiel to sit for 7 days among the people. He sent Ezekiel to work among the people. And He has sent each of us to do the same. To share the gospel of Jesus freely, regardless of the response that we may receive. And to manifest the attributes of Jesus in this world, regardless of the response that we might get in return. God doesn't give us that directive and then abandon us. He'll be there to help us. But He reminds us with what He says to Ezekiel. I've made you a watchman. And if you don't do what I've asked you to do, you're going to stand in judgment for that. We need to be serious about the work that God has given His people in our families, in our communities, within the Lord's church. He has equipped us. He has directed us. He knows the challenges that we're going to face. And regardless of how people may respond, He says, do it anyway. Do it anyway. And so this week, as we go throughout our daily lives, whatever that may look like, work, school, community activities, time with family, what is the work that God is putting in front of you? What opportunities are being presented to you to manifest the goodness of God in the world around us? I challenge all of us, myself included, not to think about how others may respond to what I'm called to do, but instead to think about the seriousness of the responsibility placed upon me to do it anyway. To move forward with confidence, knowing that if I am working in God's kingdom and in God's ways for God's purposes, He will equip me for what I need, and He will see me through this. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't, maybe they'll respond positively, maybe they won't. That's on them. I have a job to do. If you're here this evening, we want to extend the invitation before we close. Maybe you haven't become a child of God. Maybe you haven't repented of the sins that you've committed, confessing Jesus as your Lord and being baptized for the forgiveness of your sins. There's no reason to leave here this evening without doing that. And if you're unclear about what God has said when it comes to matters of salvation, we'd love to talk to you about that this evening before we leave. If you are a Christian, maybe as we've talked about some of these things tonight, you realize, man, I've been letting the fear of how others are going to respond to me prohibit me from doing some of the good things that God has equipped and prepared me to do. I challenge you, if that's the case, to make whatever changes you need to make this evening so that you can face the week ahead knowing with boldness and confidence that you're going to be busy in God's kingdom. If we can help you with that, if we can pray with you, if we can talk through some of those things with you, if we can offer encouragement to you, we would love to do that. So please let us know how we can help.